Imagine being 18 years old. You are on the cusp of adulthood, filled with dreams and aspirations. College beckons, promising knowledge and new experiences. The working world awaits, offering a chance to forge your own path. But instead of a letter of acceptance or a job offer, you receive a draft notice. You are being called upon to serve your country, not in a classroom or a factory, but on the battlefield. Your destination, Vietnam. A faraway land shrouded in mystery and danger. A place you may have only heard whispers of, now the focal point of your future. The Vietnam War, a conflict that would claim millions of lives and scar a generation, is about to become your reality. This was the experience of countless young men during the Vietnam War. The draft, a system designed to conscript citizens for military service, became a symbol of the war's profound impact on American society. For those who received draft notices, the news brought a mixture of emotions, fear, uncertainty, resentment, and a sense of patriotic duty. Lives were put on hold, dreams were deferred, and the innocence of youth was shattered by the harsh realities of war. The Vietnam War was not just a conflict fought on distant battlefields. It was a war that reached into the homes and hearts of Americans, forever altering the fabric of American life. To understand the Vietnam War, we must first journey back in time to the late 19th century, when Vietnam was part of French Indochina. France, eager to expand its colonial empire, had gradually gained control of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, exploiting the region's resources and imposing its rule on the indigenous population. This colonial domination sowed the seeds of resentment and resistance that would eventually erupt into decades of conflict. Among the Vietnamese nationalists who rose to prominence during this period was Ho Chi Minh. Born in Nguyen Sin Cung in 1890, Ho Chi Minh embraced communist ideology as a young man, believing that it offered a path to liberation from colonial rule. He traveled widely, witnessing firsthand the struggles of oppressed peoples around the world. His travels eventually led him to Paris, where he participated in the founding of the French Communist Party. Ho Chi Minh's charisma, intellect, and unwavering commitment to Vietnamese independence made him a powerful symbol of resistance against French colonialism. In 1941, he returned to Vietnam and founded the Viet Minh, a communist-led independence movement that would play a pivotal role in the struggle for Vietnamese self-determination. The Viet Minh, drawing support from peasants and intellectuals alike, launched a guerrilla war against the Japanese occupation forces during World War II, further solidifying their legitimacy in the eyes of many Vietnamese. Ho Chi Minh's leadership, and the Viet Minh's growing strength set the stage for the tumultuous events that would follow. The end of World War II brought about a new chapter in the Vietnamese struggle for independence. With the defeat of Japan, France sought to reassert its colonial authority in Indochina. However, the Viet Minh, emboldened by their wartime successes and the growing global tide against colonialism, were determined to resist French rule. In 1946, the First Indochina War erupted, pitting the Viet Minh's guerrilla forces against the French military. The First Indochina War was a protracted and brutal conflict that dragged on for nearly a decade. The Viet Minh, employing guerrilla tactics and drawing upon their knowledge of the terrain, proved to be a formidable foe for the French. Despite superior firepower and resources, the French struggled to contain the Viet Minh's insurgency. The war exacted a heavy toll on both sides, with civilian casualties mounting as the fighting raged on. In 1954, the First Indochina War reached a turning point with the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. The Viet Minh, under the command of General Vo Nguyen Giap, achieved a decisive victory against the French forces, effectively ending France's colonial ambitions in Indochina. The subsequent Geneva Conference led to the partition of Vietnam along the 17th parallel, with Ho Chi Minh's communist forces in control of the north and a Western-backed government established in the south. This division, intended as a temporary measure pending nationwide elections, would prove to be a fateful decision, setting the stage for the Second Indochina War, better known as the Vietnam War. Section 4. The Domino Theory, America's Entry into the Fray. As the dust settled on the First Indochina War, a new chapter was about to unfold, one that would draw the United States deeper into the quagmire of Southeast Asia. The newly established government in South Vietnam, led by Ngo Dinh Diem, faced an uncertain future. The Geneva Accords mandated nationwide elections to reunify Vietnam, but Diem, fearing a communist victory, refused to participate. This refusal, coupled with Diem's increasingly authoritarian rule and persecution of political opponents, fueled instability in the South and created fertile ground for communist insurgency. Enter the United States, driven by the domino theory, a Cold War-era foreign policy doctrine that posited that the fall of one country to communism would inevitably lead to the collapse of neighboring states. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, fearing the spread of communism throughout Southeast Asia, saw South Vietnam as a crucial bulwark against communist expansion. The Eisenhower administration, providing economic and military aid to South Vietnam, embarked on a policy of containment aiming to prevent the spread of communism beyond its existing borders. President John F. Kennedy, assuming office in 1961, inherited the escalating crisis in Vietnam. Kennedy, deeply committed to containing communism, increased the number of American military advisors in South Vietnam, providing training and support to the South Vietnamese army. These advisors, initially tasked with a non-combat role, found themselves increasingly drawn into the conflict as the situation deteriorated. The United States, once a distant benefactor, was becoming more deeply enmeshed in the Vietnamese quagmire. Section 5. Turmoil in Saigon, the rise and fall of Diem. The situation in South Vietnam continued to deteriorate throughout the early 1960s. Ngo Dinh Diem's regime, plagued by corruption, nepotism, and a brutal crackdown on dissent, alienated large segments of the South Vietnamese population. The Viet Cong, communist guerrillas operating in the South, exploited this discontent, gaining support in rural areas and launching increasingly audacious attacks on government targets. The United States, alarmed by the growing strength of the Viet Cong and the instability of Diem's regime, found itself increasingly caught in a web of its own making. Diem's repressive policies, far from stemming the communist tide, seemed to be driving more South Vietnamese into the arms of the Viet Cong. The Kennedy administration, grappling with the complexities of the situation, faced a difficult choice: continue to support Diem's increasingly unpopular regime, or risk a communist takeover of South Vietnam. In November 1963, a US-backed coup d'etat led to the assassination of Ngo Dinh Diem and his brother, Ngo Dinh Nhu. The coup, while removing an unpopular leader, plunged South Vietnam into further chaos. A succession of weak and short-lived governments followed, each struggling to assert control over the country. The assassination of Diem, far from stabilizing the situation, created a power vacuum that the Viet Cong were quick to exploit. The United States, already deeply involved in Vietnam, found itself drawn even further into the conflict, its hopes for a quick and decisive victory fading with each passing day. Section 6. Escalation and attrition, the nature of the conflict. Following the assassination of Ngo Dinh Diem, the United States found itself increasingly embroiled in the Vietnam War. President Lyndon B. Johnson, driven by the domino theory and a desire to avoid the perception of American weakness, escalated U.S. involvement. The Gulf of Tonkin incident in August 1964, where North Vietnamese torpedo boats allegedly attacked U.S. destroyers, provided the pretext for Johnson to secure congressional authorization for military force. The Vietnam War was unlike any conflict the United States had previously fought. It was a guerrilla war, fought in dense jungles and rice paddies, where the line between civilians and combatants was often blurred. The Viet Cong, masters of guerrilla warfare, utilized a complex network of tunnels, blended in with the local population, and employed hit-and-run tactics. The United States, accustomed to conventional warfare, struggled to adapt to the unconventional nature of the conflict. The Johnson administration pursued a strategy of attrition, seeking to inflict heavy casualties on the enemy. This strategy led to a massive bombing campaign against North Vietnam and the deployment of hundreds of thousands of American ground troops. The war escalated into a brutal and costly stalemate, with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. The Tet Offensive in early 1968, a coordinated series of attacks by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army, marked a turning point in the war. Although militarily a failure for the Communists, the Tet Offensive shattered the American public's perception of the war's progress, fueling growing anti-war sentiment at home. As the Vietnam War raged on, the cost of the conflict became increasingly apparent. The relentless bombing campaigns and ground battles took a devastating toll on both the Vietnamese population and the American soldiers sent to fight. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, their villages destroyed and their lives upended. The human cost of the war extended far beyond the battlefield, leaving scars that would last for generations. Back in the United States, the war sparked widespread protest and division. Images of the conflict, broadcast into living rooms across the nation, ignited a powerful anti-war movement. Students, activists, and ordinary citizens took to the streets, demanding an end to the violence and a return of American troops. The war had become a deeply polarizing issue, fracturing the nation and challenging its leaders. For the soldiers who served, the Vietnam War was a harrowing experience. Many returned home to a country that was deeply divided and often ungrateful for their sacrifices. The psychological and emotional wounds of the war would haunt many veterans for the rest of their lives. As we conclude our deep dive into the Vietnam War, we reflect on the immense sacrifices and the enduring impact of this conflict. The lessons learned from this dark chapter in history continue to resonate today, reminding us of the profound costs of war and the importance of striving for peace. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more historical insights.